Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, Filipinos finally cast their votes in the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections.
Kailangan ipakita mo talaga na may pagbabago, nakikisama ka sa pagboto ng sa bawat barangay namin.
Officials say the voting day was peaceful.
Ay maluwalhating nakapagdaraos ngayon ang eleksyon at ito po ay dahil nga sa pagtutulungan, pasigasig na pagtutulungan ng COMELEC, AFP, PNP and other agencies of government.
But there were reports of vote buying to violence.
We are really very careful dito sa mga reports na to. We need them to be validated.
Also, promoting federalism. The Interior Department goes on tour. Interior Assistant Secretary Jonathan Malaya joins us live. And later, President Duterte visits the Philippine Rise. That's for today's In Focus. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. From voters' complaints of extreme heat and exhaustion up to the merrymaking after the announcement of voting results, emotions ran high during the elections. Our correspondent Makoy Popioco gives us a look at how yesterday's elections went at Manila's biggest poll center in Tondo.
Ahead of the polling center's opening at the Rosauro Almario Elementary School in Tondo, Manila at 7 in the morning, people trooped to the polls early, causing long lines in voting centers. They want to avoid long queues in Manila's biggest polling center. More than 50,000 people from 17 barangays are registered here. Officials expected a 90% voter turnout.
As you can see, it's really hard to move around inside the polling center. This is the situation here the entire day. Tens of thousands of voters come in droves, and they only have to fit in just about 100 classrooms.
This could be the reason why 48-year-old Juanita Postrana fainted while lining up outside a classroom. She was rushed to a nearby hospital in a police patrol vehicle. Some children also got lost as their parents voted.
Nagano siya na iyak lakad ng lakad sa third floor. Sabi naman kasama ko, baba mo na para hindi ko naman alam eh.
And of course, the perennial problems, including voters having difficulty finding their names on the voters list. Among them, 18-year-old Beverly Bagtas, who is excited as a first-time voter.
Ngayon, nagtanong kami dun sa stage. Sabi dun daw namin matitrace ko anong siya. Wala naman, hindi daw updated yung list nila. Wala siya.
Some senior citizen voters also got mad as they waited for an hour without a poll supervisor attending to them.
Katulad ko, kanina pa ako, nahihilo na ako. Hanggang ngayon, wala pa rin. Uwi na ako dahil nahihilo na ako eh.
School Principal Romeo Fernandez meanwhile says they will make sure all voters would be attended to. It's taking time though because they lack volunteer teachers.
Siguro ang suggestion ko lang sa susunod na election na mag-assign din tayo talaga ng electoral boards para lang doon sa mga senior citizens at saka PWDs.
Despite the challenges, some voters patiently face them just to exercise their right to vote. One of them is 30-year-old Jennifer Canlobo, who tags along her two children as she voted.
Kailangan ipakita mo talaga na may pagbabago, nakikisama ka sa pagboto ng sa bawat barangay namin. Kumbaga malalapitan mo yung katulad na merong libreng gamot.
26-year-old call center agent Riza Soco meanwhile believes she has to fulfill her obligation to the country.
Actually, galing akong trabaho, so it's very hassle for me kasi may lagnat din ako pero tinis ko kasi one vote count. So my vote count talaga.
Others share this sentiment.
Yung efficient at effective na project.
Gusto ko pong magkaroon po ng kapayapaan ng bansa sa pamunuan.
They're also hoping that the new barangay and SK officials will make it worth their sacrifice in the voting process by serving the public well. Rex Remitio, CNN, Philippines.
Millions of Filipinos have voted for their new barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan officials. The Philippine National Police says yesterday's elections were generally peaceful, despite over a dozen confirmed cases of election-related deaths. Authorities also received reports of several election offenses, including vote buying and intimidation on some candidates who were forced to withdraw from the race. Acting COMELEC Chairman Al Pareño says they will also suspend the proclamation of around 1,000 barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan candidates if they win due to their violations. How will this affect the local government units? Let's go straight to the source of the story. Interior Assistant Secretary Jonathan Malaya. Asec, welcome to the show. Good to meet you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here.
All right, so let's start with your overall assessment of yesterday's elections.
Well, despite the hiccups that we experienced along the way, it's been generally smooth and peaceful. There has been in terms of election-related violence, there has been a marked increase decrease. Sorry, there's been a marked decrease compared to the election violence in 2013, the last time we had. As of yesterday, we only have 12 or 13 confirmed election-related violence, despite the fact that one of them was a very high-profile case, the one in La Union with Congressman Irigel. And I think one of the reasons why all of the polling centers actually opened. So this is sort of a record in barangay elections, because normally we would have 1 or 2 failures in some areas, and surprisingly in these elections, all polling centers opened. Some were late opening because of some problems, but they actually opened. So
in fact, we spoke to COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez yesterday, and he said that some of the problems were hindi din dumating. Some of the teachers were also late, but everyone opened, all 42,000 plus barangays.
That's right. And one of the things I think that made it possible is the fact that there's this new law, the Election Service Reform Act, wherein if the teacher service becomes voluntary, and if in case they do not wish to serve, there's a chronology of people who will serve. And the last there is the police. So we deployed 1,100 police officers as BETs. Before, this was a problem because there was no law authorizing this. Police officers are supposed to stay a few meters away from the polling center.
In fact, they're not supposed to be very close to the polling center.
Exactly. Now with this law, if the peace and order problem becomes serious enough to cause a failure of election, the law now allows police officers and members of the AFP to serve as Board of Election Tellers.
And they were taught and trained to do this.
They were. I'm very happy to have heard this a few weeks before the election. Some 1,000 police officers were trained by the COMELEC in every region of the country. So you would find in Cavite, for example, there was a problem with teachers pulling out because of problems on the ground. It was the police officers in Dasmariñas who served as Board of Election Tellers.
So there were actually members of the AFP and PNP who served as BETs.
Yes, they did.
One was in Cavite, as you said, Dasmariñas.
Yes.
Okay.
And most of them were in Mindanao, again.
Well, because of the, I guess, siguro areas of concern.
That's right. Yeah.
So overall, that's good because there was no failure of election in any of the barangays.
That's right.
However, there is an issue, though, I think, Asec, that even if there was no failure in election, there were some areas that there were no candidates for the Sangguniang Kabataan. Is that true, sir?
Yes, yes. We didn't have any problems with the barangay. We have problems with the SK. And based on the final tally that I got from the COMELEC yesterday, only 39 barangays in the country have no candidates or incomplete candidates, because you need a SK chairman and 7 SK members to form the SK council. So 39 is really an insignificant statistic.
But I wonder why that happened. Bakit either wala? It's two reasons. Either there were no candidates or there were incomplete candidates.
Yes.
Why did that happen?
Well,
is it because people don't know about it? Is it because the last election was held in, was it 2010 for the SK?
For the SK,
right?
It's a long time.
And it was supposed to be in 2013, and then it was supposed to be in 2016.
We got a lot of reasons for that. One mayor told me that there was a misappreciation or misunderstanding of what the anti-political dynasty provision means. They thought that second degree of consanguinity or affinity meant second-degree cousin.
Which they need to understand.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
But we did and tried to explain that, but because of the constant pressure from the lower house to postpone the election, I think a lot of the people on the ground were saying, these elections are not going to happen anyway, so why take it seriously?
Yeah.
Because if you remember, they did pass a law up to the last minute, a bill in the lower house.
I think it was in February of 2018, was it?
Yes, very recently.
Yeah.
Very recently. So as late as the filing of the COCs, people were still asking the DILG, is the elections proceeding? And I said, so long as the Senate fails to act on this, these elections are proceeding.
You're right, because there was still a question on that. In fact, we were even asking COMELEC kung matutuloy, and they were saying that as long as there's no law passed, it actually is pushing through. So would it also be confusion on whether the elections would push through or not that made some people not want to run for SK?
I think we'll never know the reason. It will forever be a mystery, but one is that. The confusion is also another issue. The third one is the fact that many of these are far-flung barangays. No, these are not barangays in the poblacion. These are barangays in mountainous areas. And the fourth reason...
And because of that, there's lack of information. Is that so?
Lack of information, perhaps. I don't know exactly the reason. And I think the last one is SK officials do not receive anything, really, in terms of honoraria. Because they don't.
Wala ba silang bayad?
No, they don't. No.
Pero may budget sila.
They have a budget.
Hindi ba malaki din ang budget nila?
It depends on the size of the barangay.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about Quezon City, we're talking millions. But if we're talking about Northern Samar, we're talking about Masbate, all of those far-flung provinces, they practically have very nil because it's just 10% of the entire budget of the barangay, are allocated towards the SK.
So 10% of the budget of the barangay goes to the SK.
Yes.
And what is the computation for the budget of the barangay?
Well,
it's not the ERA because the ERA goes to the LGUs. And the barangay is the smallest unit of the LGU.
There is also an ERA for the barangay. Okay. So there's a formula found in the local government code. So the barangays get ERA allocation, and some of these barangays get a lot, no? Especially here in Metro Manila. No?
The progressive ones.
The progressive ones, the highly urbanized cities. No? So that's one. The second one is they have shares in the real property taxes.
But this is barangay still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And sometimes they have fees. These barangays have fees. You know, if you're Smart or Globe, you want to set up a tower, you have to pay fees with the barangay.
Yeah.
So the more progressive and the more entrepreneurial barangays. Yes, it's like Bel Air, for example. They have a lot. Their barangay hall has an elevator. When you go in, it's like CNN.
Actually, doon ang botohan sa Bel Air.
Doon ang botohan, yeah.
Okay. So that's the funds, no, that's collected from by the barangay. But the SK, I wanted to, where do they get their funds? You said that part of the ERA actually goes to the Sangguniang.
So what happens is the barangay gets all of these funds from all of the sources, and then you total that, and the 10% of the entire budget goes to the SK.
So ang budget ng SK nanggagaling sa barangay. 10% of the barangay. All right, we'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. When we return, we're still going to talk about the barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections yesterday, and also we'll talk about this. Majority of Filipinos do not support a shift to federalism. How is the government addressing this? And later, President Rodrigo Duterte is visiting Philippine Rise. We'll tell you what you need to know about the plateau on today's In Focus. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today is Interior Assistant Secretary Jonathan Malaya. Sir, so there are reports of unqualified candidates who may have won but will not be allowed to take their posts. Tell us more about this, sir.
Well, the first problem is the third-termer barangay officials. No? And as early as a few months ago, the DILG collated all of the list of third-termer barangay officials because we work with them every day as part of our mandate. So we submitted this list to COMELEC. And our expectation from COMELEC was that they will use this as a guide so that whenever a person files his certificate of candidacy and they cross-reference it with their list and sees that this person is a third-termer, they wouldn't accept the COC. But I was told by the COMELEC that the act of receiving the COC is ministerial.
Ibig sabihin, tanggap lang sila ng tanggap without vetting.
Exactly. And I think this is one of the things that our members of Congress should take a look at.
Yeah, but what a waste of time.
Yes.
Isn't that a waste of time? Kung tatanggap ka lang, sana ma-cross-check mo na para right there and then
Yes.
you will find out if you're okay to run or not.
Yes, and the election officer has to submit this to higher authorities because I was told that this has to be screened by the law department here in Intramuros.
Okay.
That is why yesterday, COMELEC made an announcement that around 1,000 would have, in case they win, their proclamations will be suspended. So I think there is a better way of doing this. I don't. If the source if the source of this policy is a law, it should be amended. If it's jurisprudence, maybe we can have that revisited because I think there has to be a faster process of sieving or vetting all of these candidates because doing this, sending all of this to the law department, I think doesn't work.
Yeah, and it's counterproductive. You accept. And if right there and then you know that hindi naman siya qualified, hindi mo na kailangan dalhin pa sa law department. I mean, these are papers that you need not be circulated if first and foremost they're not supposed to be running.
Exactly. Well, COMELEC was telling me that by doing so, you're actually fooling government. So you are liable for falsification of public documents. Yeah. But that further complicates the issue. If you just close the door at the entrance, so you don't have to go through all of these.
Hindi ka na pwede pumasok, diba?
Huwag ka na pumasok. Yeah.
Parang nalaman mo na, above ano ka, itong age bracket na to, hindi ka na pwede. All right, so that needs to be fixed, amended, and that'll be good for everyone. Understandable.
Exactly. That's right.
What if they won and they are unqualified? Let's say a barangay captain or any of the 7 kagawads win, but they're unqualified. What's the process here? Who wins?
You know, Pinky, I'm not a lawyer, no? So I'm not very sure if my answer will be correct. Okay. But I was told by the lawyers yesterday at the COMELEC that it depends upon what petition was filed. If it was a petition for falsification or if it was a petition for dequalification, it depends. So the consequence is, depending on the petition filed, no, and maybe you can have another from COMELEC interviewed about this, it could either be the person who got the second highest number of votes, or it could be the first kagawad. So I don't want to speak Yes. I don't want to speak any further because I'm not an election lawyer. But it depends upon which petition was filed against that certain candidate.
Okay, so here, I know you can answer this because I read there are 3 options here. For those 39 barangays that did not have SK candidates or incomplete SK candidates, what are the options for that barangay?
Well, the first option is for the DILG or the National Youth Commission to appoint SK officials in that barangay. To make that happen, we need to request authority from the Office of the President because under the Administrative Code, the Office of the President can fill in positions in the exercise of his plenary powers. Okay. The second option is call for a special election. And I was discussing this with COMELEC yesterday, and I was telling them maybe that's the easier path to take. Because if we go through the appointment process, people are going to say, oh, you're going to appoint...
It could be politicized.
It could be politicized. Okay. You're going to appoint people of your preference. So why not just hold elections? Anyway, these are just 39.
Konti lang to.
Yeah, and we're just doing the elections in those specific areas. We're not redoing the elections across the country. And the third option is we have the local youth development officer on the municipal level who can somehow take charge of activities in these barangays who have no SK or incomplete SK.
And the barangay winners and the Sangguniang Kabataan winners will also have, just like before, a 3-year term. Tama ho ba?
No, unfortunately, they have a 2-year term.
2 years only.
2-year only under the postponement, the law that postponed the election. They'll only serve for 2 years.
Wow.
But, you know, in the Philippines, nothing is...
But at least in the law, it's now 2 years. But in the past, it was every 3 years.
It was 3 years.
Both SK and barangay.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So ngayon, 2 years.
Yes.
Can you explain to us bakit 2 years na lang? So ibig sabihin, 2020 new elections supposed to be for barangay and SK elections.
I really don't know the logic. Maybe it's because of the several postponements already coming from the past, they wanted to sort of synchronize it with the forthcoming regular elections.
Yeah, but if it's 2020, that doesn't synchronize it with midterm elections. All right, sir, I just wanted to get the overall view of the DILG on this. Now that finally we have a new set of barangay and SK officials, of course, some still going to be proclaimed. How does this change, the landscape somehow at the smallest unit of governance here in the Philippines?
Well, on the anti-drug level, because this has been the centerpiece program of the government, is we're happy that a lot of the people who have been identified as drug linked have not been elected. I don't have the complete list right now, but for example, a few days before the election, we filed the case against the barangay captain of Tenejeros in Malabon. He's a notorious drug-linked barangay captain. And a drug laboratory was actually discovered by the PDEA in his jurisdiction. He was defeated in in yesterday's election.
Pero tumakbo siya.
Tumakbo siya. Tumakbo pa rin siya despite the fact that cases were filed. And I think the signal that was sent by the government that we are serious about this somehow was able to penetrate the voters, and they decided to change leadership. Same thing happened in Parañaque. Same thing happened in Pasay. So we have a new set of leaders now who are hopefully cleaner and more distanced from drug operations. So in that sense, that's okay. Number two, we're also very positive that these are public officials who now realize that there's more to being a barangay official than in the past. Before there was this tendency that barangay lang naman yan pagbigyan na natin, si ano na lang patakbuhin natin yan So by constantly harping that the barangay is the closest unit of government to the people and you have to deliver services, I hope that this new set of barangay officials will be able to live up to the challenge.
All right. Just very quickly on federalism, there was a latest survey, I believe it was by Pulse Asia, that said majority of Filipinos do not support the shift to federalism. Of course, we're asking this to the ASEC because you are the federal campaign chief.
Well,
di ba kayo ang federal campaign chief,
so far as the
sir?
DILG is concerned, no, this is centerpiece program of the government, so it's everybody in government is supposed to be campaigning for this.
But didn't the president appoint you as the federal campaign chief, sir?
Well,
Hindi ho ba?
Well, I was designated by the Secretary of Interior.
Okay. So tell us about what government is doing now that this recent survey has come out and saying two things, sir. Majority of Filipinos do not want to shift to a federal form of government. And the number two was 7 out of 10 have little or no knowledge on federalism, sir.
Okay. So let me just address the first point, that apparently they say, based on Pulse Asia survey, that majority. We took a look at the figures there. And
I know you dissected that. Sige, sir.
I did. I dissected that because it's not really a problem. It's 25% are okay for it now. The other 30% are okay for it, but not now. So a majority actually are okay with it. They just disagree on when it's going to happen.
Timing.
It's a timing. Okay. So in a sense, that's encouraging to us because that gives us a lot of leeway.
So let's look at that. It's not in favor is 66%. You are saying that in that 66%, again, 20 what, sir? 23%? Paano ho ulit?
Yes. That 66% is divided into those who are saying not in favor now. Okay? Yeah. So if you total that, that's more than 50%. Around 60% are actually not, that they don't just agree on when to do the...
So not now.
Not now.
Not okay, now. But isn't that the essence of surveys, sir? Even if you have a survey on who will win as senators, if elections were held now, yun naman ang essence ng survey. So sa kanila, 66%, not now.
Yes.
Ganun din.
Well, I don't have a bone of contention there, I understand. But the plebiscite is not happening now.
True.
It's happening next year or maybe 2 years from now. And the reason why I said it was premature is because there is no model yet that has been forwarded by the President to the Filipino people.
We don't know what kind of model of federal form.
There's a consultative commission which was organized by the President, led by Chief Justice Puno. They're deciding what form, what model. Is it going to be the US, Germany, Switzerland? There's so many federal models. So I would say that once the model comes out and a survey says that the same result, then I would be in trouble.
You know what? It's important that we find out first what comes out of the consultative commission too, because we need to understand federal form of government and the kind of federal form of government. So we'll talk about that again another time. Interior Assistant Secretary Jonathan Malaya. Sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Maraming salamat,
Thank you, sir. You're watching The Source on CNN. Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte visits the Philippine Rise to commemorate the renaming of the undersea plateau. That's for today's In Focus.